Yeah, great.
So at the moment I'm doing a joint paper with Nigel about authentic leadership, and it's really got me thinking about my original thoughts about why I value participation so much in the work that I do. And I had a really great conversation with my foster mum yesterday, talking about when I was fostered from 3.5, and I had the feeling that I'd always felt that I was able to participate in the decisions that were being made about me. And it was really interesting talking to my mum, who confirmed that even from the age of 5, that I would sit down and talk with my social worker about my feelings about being fostered and what I wanted to happen and where I wanted to live, and that I was actually asked my opinions about those things, and then all the way through my childhood. But it also made me reflect that my parents, my foster parents, also respected and valued and listened to what I was saying, and that really I can't think that I could have worked any other way when I started working with sort of young people who had all sorts of complex needs. I don't think I knew another way of working other than listening to them and making sure that what I was doing was meeting their needs. And then I've carried that on to try and increase my influence as I've been working, and that's really spurred me on to take on a leadership role. And now as the Chief Executive of a carers centre, I've got more influence, but instead of using that for me, I tried to make sure that I listen to what the carers want and really use that to make a difference for them, and so that their voices are heard within what they want from the services that they get. So that's what I'm about at the moment.
Yeah, great.
Well, I don't think I'm doing very much at the moment, probably just very busy with kind of the current situation and so on. But I think what really kind of has taken me to do what I do is a strong belief in inclusion as well, in a way. Obviously I work in a very specific field with children with vision impairment and hearing impairment. I suppose I quite enjoy that because it's a group that is very small and kind of difficult to listen to or even to identify. I think it's interesting because I didn't quite know what made me kind of come into this field. Part of it was just a question of events in my life, and I was passionate about special educational needs because I really felt that to me the ability of developing others and enabling others to achieve things that maybe other people didn't think they were able to achieve was really very important, and actually gave me lots of pleasure to just be able to support others doing that. I did a special education course, and it was a bit through actually difficult events in my life when my mum lost a job and so on that I actually was at university still, but I needed to get a bit of a part-time job to keep me going. And there was a job, I did music as well, and there was a job for music teacher at the Helen Keller Institute in Portugal, and that's how I actually ended up in vision impairment. And I always thought, well, that was it, there was nothing else. And I was discussing with a colleague of mine, a friend, who was doing some research on inclusion and saying that, every time she interviewed people always had other reasons why they went into that field and so on, but they weren't aware of that. And I thought, I think there's not, my grandfather became blind, but that was afterwards, I don't think there was anything. And then suddenly I remembered, actually, a long time before, I was listening to a conversation between my mom and one of her friends. It was a very sad conversation, and it was about an accident that happened to a kid in my secondary school who was walking to school, and this car was stuck at the crossing and actually forced the crossing, and the chain was a chain, not the barrier, got loose and hit him across the face, and he became blind as a result. And actually was taken away, and he was taken away from his family, and and although he wasn't very far nowadays, actually his family didn't have the ability to actually go and see him and so on. So I think to me, it's not just about inclusion, it's about belonging and the fact that, it's all of us really. So yeah, and I think, very passionate about working with children that way, but yes, I didn't particularly want to be head of the service. I didn't think I wanted to. It was just kind of, again, it just happened. Actually, someone asked me, would you be interested? No, not really. That's not what kind of drove me. Yeah. But then actually, it was a bit sad situation. My boss had to go, and suddenly there was no one. I was moaning about the situation and what the service needed, and then I thought, well, if I have some idea of what is needed, then I should have a go at contributing. If I'm not the best person, then that's fine. Someone else will do it. But if I do it, I'll do my best. And actually, I discovered that I really enjoyed that, because again, in the same way you help developing children, you also help developing adults, doing the best for the children as well. So yeah, really, I'm really enjoying, despite all the challenges of nowadays.
Could we just say, what is it? In other words, what are you head of?
The sensory support service. So I lead a group of mainly teachers for deaf children and teachers for visually impaired children.
Is that in the southwest or Bristol?
It's it's across 4 authorities: Bristol, North Somerset, Bath and North East Somerset, and South Gloucester.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, great.
That in itself is quite complicated, with the different systems and so on.
Yeah, I do enjoy challenges.
Okay, I just want to say something where I am with my PhD at the moment. As I just said, I've just been through my confirmation event. And, Nigel had warned me, after that, he didn't do anything for a while, sort of thing. So he sort of warned me about this. But the same thing sort of happened to me, really. You sort of really work up to this confirmation event and prepare very carefully and so on. And you just feel like, afterwards, you feel as if you've just completed something. Then as the weeks are going on, I'm thinking, hey, I've got to start shifting on with this. I've got to shift. So I thought, well, where am I going now? Where am I going now? And what's really sort of interesting me or capturing my thoughts at the moment is why I am doing a self-study. And what's the sort of value in a self-study. And also this is arising as well. Joan, our supervisor, is having this colloquium at Liverpool Hope University, looking into this sort of aspect about personal stories and all this sort of thing. So anyway, I've started looking at the literature on it, and Jack gave me a book and so on. Also, I've started looking at papers, and I've started writing about that, looking at the Buller and Pinniger on the quality of self-study, and then Feldman's response to that about the validity of self-study. And I came to Conversation Cafe the other day, so I started doing my writing, and sort of the question arose, yes, that's fine, but that's what other people are saying about it. What about you? What am I saying about it? And so on. What do I feel? What are my personal views about self-study? What am I doing? So anyway, I came across then a really good article, and you were involved with this, Jack, Marion Dad's 1993. And that has really so struck a chord with me, because everything that she was saying in that article just made it so clear, and I could really engage with this, what I'm feeling, a bit about self-study. Like what she says is, she's sort of been a supervisor or whatever, or involved in this pilot, whereby I think it was this teacher being supervised, and the feedback that this teacher was given really demoralised him. He could not take, because he sort of exposed himself, opened himself up, he could not take the sort of criticisms or whatever, and then he ended up sort of mentally ill, I think, as a result of this. It really had an impact on him. And it's this idea of a self-study, sort of exposing yourself. There was another one that she goes into video as well, whereby they videoed people, and this one, that was quite devastating as well, because it's one person, she was a deputy head in a school, she didn't have a very good relationship with the head teacher, she didn't feel in a very good place herself emotionally, she saw a video of herself and it just demoralised her, And so what Marion Dad was trying to do is to put it in the context of this self-study. Now, somebody else, another teacher, videoed herself, and just like when we first watch videos, I don't want to watch, I don't want to see it. And she said she went home and she looked at this video on her own with nobody in, and cringing as you do and so on and whatever. And then she showed it to her husband, and her husband said, wow, that's fantastic, that's amazing. And the impact of that. But what this whole article was about, I could really engage with it, how it is, you do take risks when you do a self-study, because you do expose yourself. There are times, and I can relate to this as well, you feel very vulnerable, you know, when you say things. You can feel quite vulnerable. And also, you feel, there are sometimes you feel you can only say perhaps to some people or whatever. So what I'm doing now from that, I am looking at my feelings as I'm reflecting on the self-studies that I've done, these feelings of vulnerability, this feelings of risk-taking, and I'm also looking at what's helping me through it then. Okay, I have not had a nervous breakdown as yet, you know, not yet, sort of thing. I haven't had that. I'm looking at the sort of the characteristics that I've got that I've got with dealing it. And I suppose I'm quite sort of emotionally quite self-resilient, you know, and I think that's quite important as well. I'm looking at other things what's helping me with my self-study as well. And I definitely think like Conversation Cafe has just been a fantastic support to me, whereby, you know, you are with a group of people whereby you can expose yourself and you feel, okay, you're taking risks, but you're taking risks in a safe place. It's a safe thing to do. So that's what I'm doing at the moment then, is sort of looking at all these different issues regarding self-study and how I'm working through it, really.
Could you just, as I asked with Joe, just say what your position is within the authority? Because
My position,
Yeah.
right, okay, yes. My position at the moment is Statutory Special Education and Needs Manager in Bath and North East Somerset. Within the Education Inclusion Service that's I've been a part of that. That there's been a huge reorganisation, whereby now I'm a part of the Outcomes Lead Service, I suppose it would be called. But I have a team of people. There's eight of us all together, and at varying sort of levels, 2 senior inclusion officers and about 6 case officers. And, you know, it's a fantastic team. It is a great team. Good. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Nigel Harrisson, and I am the Principal Educational Psychologist for a company called QuEST, Quality Education Support and Training Limited. My passion really is, I still haven't figured it out completely as to where it all comes from, but it is something to do with, I want the world to be a better place for me being in it in some ways. It's about children. I've got this real strong sense of children being the future, and for me being part of their future as well. And that's for all children. And where this has come from, I think it's very, very early on in my childhood, and almost everything I do is driven by that feeling that, you know, I've got to protect children, I've got to encourage them, I've got to nurture them to be the future that they want to be in an educational way. So in doing that, I've come up from being a teacher, working with some really disadvantaged kids, mostly disadvantaged kids, as I went into being a psychologist as well, and then working in a local authority as the Education Inclusion Service Manager. And part of it was the direct working with children and young people and the relationships. I've started thinking actually a lot of what I do is about those relationships. And the kids I dealt with, probably, you know, some of the kids, you know, can smell disingenuous from miles off. They know when you're not the genuine person. They know when you're playing a game because that's their life. They have to suss it out pretty damn quickly to survive. And I just wanted to be me as well, so I didn't want to play a game of being something else. So it's always had this thing, although it wasn't particularly labelled this, but about being authentic, being myself. That fitted in with an interest I had in learning organisation. So could I actually help an organisation, so a collective of people, be authentic and therefore develop the relationships and so on. Fitting in again with the living theory approach to understanding myself and those relationships. So as those sort of 3 things come together for me, in terms of authenticity and leadership, learning organisation and the living theory approach to research. So that's where I'm at the moment in terms of just trying to explore how those relationships work, and being myself, really. I was quite influenced by Carl Rogers and on becoming a person, I think it's called there, and the idea of warmth, congruence, and so on. And that's sort of like, the 5 things I would like to be. And it's not as though I can be all those things all the time, but it's an aspiration that, because there's times when I have conversations and you've had a bad night and you're not warm and all those sorts of things, but it's recognising actually that I'm not my usual self there.
And I think it would be good just to mention that, if you like, today marks a transition in terms of your location professionally, because where you've been the lead and the head of a inclusion and education team in the local authority, it feels to me you've now moved in the sense of a learning organisation to something you're now creating with Sandra in terms of quality education, support and training. But it's moving you into a totally different sense of organisation. I'm making sense here that whether you've come into a sense of a community, which is very different to the local authority. So I think that's worth just mentioning, that it marks a transition now into a very different location for your influence.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's geographically different, it's environmentally different, community different. I think the one thing I'm taking with me are those sort of core values that I've always still, even in this business, that we've got to make some money to keep it going. It's not all about making money. It's about actually, can I make a difference here? We talked earlier about maybe doing some work around mental health. It's not because there's money to be made out of that, but actually there's a big gap there where teachers are frightened of the label of kids with mental health, and I want them not to be frightened of it, because there's a lot of kids out and a lot of adults out there who need to be included, and it is that, and they have got 2 heads,
Great.
No.
Okay, well, I suppose intentions are related to what I've been doing for the last literally 40 odd years, where I've been very different to your notions that you mentioned earlier about vulnerability. I've been working on this paper with Jackie DeLong, it's called Liz Campbell and Cathy Griffin, and they're in Canada. We'll be doing a lot of work on Skype. And one of the areas that has come up is, and I think there's a gender bias here, in relation to the vulnerability that the women have all acknowledged as being very, very important. And as Chris just mentioned towards the end of your talk about the issue of trust and comfort. And I've been saying to the 3 women, well, this is not my experience. Even now, I don't feel vulnerable. I get very excited about the possibility of bringing your embodied knowledge and sharing it, because it feels to me that if I can help to spread those influences that you've all been expressing, the world becomes a better place to be. I'm making sense there. Now, I don't feel any vulnerability about this, and it's the same with my own narrative. Even when I feel I'm a living contradiction, I can show myself in videotapes. There is hope in the way I recognise that I'm not doing what I believe in, and my imagination immediately starts to work. And there's an energy there and a real hope. So I'd like to show you this section on vulnerability that we're just getting. It's got to be in today, actually, to ARA, because I think it will link in with what you're doing. But what I'm really passionate about is trying to find a way now of having a systemic influence. I've done a lot of work individually. And I think, we've all experienced that sense of I work on an individual side, like with the children that you were working with. And I think we've done a lot of work to show that we can improve, that, if you like, contribute to the improvements in the lives of individuals in particular sites. I think there's a tremendous weakness when we come to having a systemic influence. And that's what's fascinating me. And I don't think it's arrogance about this sense of a global influence, because the action research movements are now literally global, and this new one for the Action Research Network of the Americas for the inaugural conference on the 1st and 2nd of May in San Francisco is where quite a number of us are going to try and, if you like, extend the influence of action research. And this is what I'd love to be able to take, which is what you've just been expressing as you've been talking. It was carrying your embodied values and knowledge. And it's this that I'm saying, look, these are the qualities that I think others will resonate with and share and pool the energy that Sonia is really committed to sharing. And so that's what I'm about, and that's what I hope to continue to do. So,
Good.
okay. Shall I